everyone. Today I have with me author Brian Paone, and Brian is the author of yours truly, 2095. I want to make sure I got the year right. Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, I loved your book. I loved this book. I can't even tell you how much I love this book because, as a matter of fact, when I found out that it wasn't like, this is not your full-time gig, right? Which I find so hard to believe that you're not writing full-time. Okay, so is that a goal to write full-time?
Oh yeah, I would say that's definitely the ultimate, proverbial carrot, that you're chasing. So
right. Well, I hope that I can help you achieve that because you're writing. Okay, so when I start reading this, and for everybody who, doesn't know what this book is about, it's a time-traveling book, and there's this guy named Jeff, and he wakes up, and everything is pretty normal, except for it doesn't take him long to figure out that he's not in the right year or place.
Yeah.
He's in the right place and not the right year, and, I love time-traveling books, I love time-traveling movies, but this is this is so much different than anything I ever read before. And maybe because he's got a wife who then turns out to not be his wife. Doesn't take him long to figure out that it's not his wife either.
Yeah, but she certainly looks like his wife.
She looks like his wife. And I have to say, in the very beginning so she's a robot? I don't know.
Yeah.
Robot.
Yeah, I would say probably more like an android or
an android yeah.
Exactly. You think of robot and you think of the Jetsons and like C-3PO from Star Wars, but she's more of a AI fully skin and
yes.
More like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator.
Right.
Like you wouldn't know unless you cut her open.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I'm trying. As I'm reading it, I'm trying to envision this. That, she's that realistic. She's so realistic that he ends up falling for her in a weird way. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know. And then by the end, I'm like, oh my God, it's so cute. And they're so in love. And I mean, I really I really got into the story. You had me going right to I have to tell you, I do not read ahead. I am not one of those readers. I was tempted to read ahead.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, resist the temptation.
What I tried to do is I tried to develop her as a character where the reader almost despises her in the beginning. Right. You don't like her. You don't trust her. Nope. But then the hardest part was to then take this character that I made the reader not trust and dislike, and then make the reader want to root for her. And I think that was one of the hardest parts writing this book, to make a character do a 360 to the reader, and I had to sell that.
Yeah.
I had to sell to the reader. No, now you want to root for her. You want to be in her corner. Yep. Where the first 50% of the book, you just want her to go away.
Yep.
But now you're on her team and you're leading the charge with her. And that took some trickery, I think, as an author to kind of circumvent that, to make it work.
And that's why I'm saying, I personally think you should be writing full time because I'm a reader. I read a book a day. I read all the time. Okay. And you definitely had me. As soon as I started to like her, I was like, oh my God, how is he getting me to like her? Because I kind of talk back to authors while I'm reading their books. That's just what I do. Oh my God, but I don't trust her, but I don't know. Maybe she is telling the truth. Maybe it's everybody else that's lying. I can't tell anymore,
Right.
So I love that about it. I mean, it's really interesting. My son, that's going to be editing this video. So he's hearing me say this. I have 6 children. He's my oldest son. So he's trying to write a novel, and he wants to write a time-traveling novel. So he's starting to do all the research, and he was, he talks to me about it. And so yours is the first one that I've read in a while, a long while. And I was thinking as I'm reading this, because 2095, it's not that far out there for some of the, when I read sci-fi thrillers, they're 4,000. This is just a little bit past, it's two generations.
Yeah, and it was it's two generations because of course his great grandfather is involved, but it's put out in a time where it's not so far forward where I needed to create this mass amounts of new technology. I just had to enhance things we already have, and so I think that having a setting like that, even though it's in the future, I think the reader isn't so far displaced from the time where that you can't understand what's it's. I'm not a big fan of sci-fi where it's on another planet and it's 4,000 years in the future and there's new races and their names I can't even pronounce out loud. And I get lost because I have no emotional connection or really any empathy for any of the characters. I don't, so I definitely, going into this, I knew 100% that I didn't want that.
Yeah.
I wanted the time that he was in to be somewhat, relatable, but also far enough ahead where, okay, maybe there is a city on the moon and maybe we do have flying cars, but I also didn't want, crazy, outlandish things either. The nightclubs are still the same nightclubs.
That's right. Even on the moon.
People are still trying to hook up with people. I mean, society itself hasn't changed too much.
Right.
Yeah,
so. I found that too. And because I had read a book actually within the last week where it was set and it was a planetary system, and I'm reading the book going, okay, which one? I get very lost. I am not a great sci-fi person. I read them because of my job here, but it's not something I go towards. But this I'd also consider, I wouldn't call it sci-fi.
No, I wouldn't.
But I would call it a thriller. I mean...
Yeah, it actually gets pegged a lot as a time travel romance novel. I get that a lot only because of the relationship between him and his wife back in his time, and then him with Joe in the future. And I've been told multiple times that at the core, if you take out the time travel, it's a romance. It's a relationship conflict. Where you're wondering if the boy gets the girl, and that's really that's really at the foundation of romance stories is, does the girl get the boy or does the boy get the girl? And really that's what you're wondering through the book,
Yeah, you're trying to figure out exactly. And I love the way that you kind of wove in what happened in their relationship,
Yeah.
As I'm reading, I'm like, well, what did happen? What is this thing that happened? And then as you're reading more and more and more, you find out exactly what did happen in their relationship. And
I wanted to bring in alcoholism and the drunk driving in an accident, because it's alcoholism and addiction is things that I've dealt with friends of mine. I had one of my best friends was a drug addict who passed away, and so I find that those themes seep into my writing a lot without me really realizing that they do. I tend to go back to people who are addicted and then the consequences of their addiction.
Right.
So I felt that him having a child who died because of his alcoholism, really would put a strain on a marriage. I needed something that was big enough to put a strain on a marriage, and I didn't want the typical cheating or the adultery. You know what I mean? I feel like that's so played out. And I wanted something that was almost unforgivable. And I would think in most marriages, if God forbid I was driving drunk and wrecked the car and killed one of our kids, I would like to think my wife wouldn't be able to forgive me.
Or be on the
so I needed something where the reader would latch on and say, oh no, if I was in that situation, I understand the plight. I get why this marriage is in turmoil.
Right.
As opposed to oh, he cheated on me, we'll just get over it, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really needed something that someone could empathize with, and go, okay, yeah. But
and what I kept thinking is when he was on the moon, and then he wouldn't drink alcohol, I was like, well, maybe he's not an alcoholic there. That might be a thing. It's not really him. It's kind of like this, other person him or something. I don't know. It was just kind of interesting because I was like, maybe that's where addiction doesn't translate, maybe he loses that part of himself. But, when you're dealing with time travel and you're trying to figure out what I love reading about time travel is you got to figure out what matters and what doesn't when you go back. And I thought you did really. That's what I really loved how you handled that in their trying to figure it out.
Right.
And because, like I said, when my son's writing, like that's one of the biggest things about time travel. If we could time travel, what would you do? If you were to go to the future or the past, like what exactly would you do? And he had that dilemma, in a very, enhanced way. Basically.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me writing the book was I spent about 4 months doing research before I even wrote the first word. From the moment that I came up with the idea to the moment that I wrote the very first word, I did 4 whole months of research. And I knew that I didn't want, for me, what was most important was making the time travel believable, or the method of it.
Right.
And I knew 100% that I didn't want some big machine with whirring lights, that spins around really fast and then poofs out of thin air, and then they go traveling through like a wormhole, like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure in the phone booth.
Yes.
Or the time machine.
Right.
I knew I didn't want a time machine. I definitely wanted to investigate ways that we could time travel using like quantum physics and the already established laws of the universe.
Right.
So I did a lot of research on all the different So when I stumbled across quantum entanglement as a theory, as a legit theory in physics, I started exploring that, and I said, "Wow, this is something I can use." And one of the things that I love about Michael Crichton is, like Jurassic Park, he gets you to believe that we could bring back dinosaurs because he uses science. Hey, we found dinosaur DNA in a mosquito. Your suspension of disbelief doesn't have to be so far-fetched. You can go, well, maybe,
Right.
So the one thing I didn't want to do was make the reader really have to suspend their disbelief so much that they wouldn't buy, And in the book, if you remember, he finds a side room of failed time machines, and I threw that in there to kind of support my theory that the whirring time metal machine was had no place in the book. So that's why I kind of had these like failed clunky machines that they had been working on.
Right. Sorry, I'm getting over my cold, so I'm like trying to figure out if I got some water.
Hey, I've only been awake for about 3 hours. 3 hours. I'm not even 3 hours yet, so I'm on my first cup of coffee.
Yeah, I just started like choking. I haven't had any issues with that. Anyway, so. Yeah, I mean, that is the most exciting part, was that it was different. It was way different than anything I had ever read before. And I read it, I should have timed myself. Because I think I read this book faster than I've ever read. I think I broke a record. Because I'm telling you, I read all the time. And I picked it up and I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to take me that long. And I think I half the amount of time that I had given myself. It was like a couple of hours, I swear. It is and I'm a fast reader. I mean, I admit that's not, not everybody's going to read as fast as me. But, right. I mean, I'm turning pages just as quick. And the last half of the book, it just, I didn't want to look, but I couldn't turn the pages fast enough. So,
well, I think that's a big compliment to any author that, that it means that the book is either flowing well, or the reader's that engaged,
yes.
So I think any book that you say that to, I think is a compliment to the author.
Yes, absolutely, and that's why I said it shocked me to hear that you weren't writing full time, because I do read a lot, and I read a lot of authors that are writing full time, and sometimes I think I can tell, if that's their full time gig or if that's but I haven't been very good at it lately. But anyway, I mean, I really hope that that's something that you can do full time. But I do. I do have an interesting question, because you seem to, the beginning of where it says the book was published, it says Japan.
Yeah. I lived in Japan for 4 years, so I wrote the book in Japan.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Why were you living in Japan?
My wife is in the military.
So my son that's editing this, he was in the Marine Corps for 6 years, and he was stationed over in Japan. So that's why I picked up on it. I was like, either you were in the military or she's in the military.
Yeah, my wife's an officer in the Navy.
Oh.
And so we were stationed in Yokosuka for 4 years, which is right below Tokyo.
He was in Okinawa.
Yeah, the Marines go to Okinawa, and so I wrote the whole book there while when we were in Japan. I wasn't working.
Oh, nice.
I didn't work while we were in Japan, so I spent basically I wrote that book. It was written, edited, everything. That book from start to finish was conceived and published in Japan.
Oh,
so,
interesting. Did you? Yeah. He loved Japan. Did you love Japan?
Loved it. Best place I've ever lived. Yeah, my two oldest kids went all 4 years we were there. Went to Japanese school, and my daughter, she's 9 now. She's fluent in Japanese. So it was, Yeah.
Well, I took 3 years of Japanese on Rosetta Stone because I'm a homeschooling mom, and like I said, I have 6 children, and I've homeschooled them all. But my youngest 2, I'm like, what language do you want to do? And they're like, let's do Japanese. Let's do something different. And I loved it. I actually picked it up pretty easy. My son picked it up really, my Marine Corps son picked it up easy, and he said it's really fun. And it was really fun. You know? It was a lot easier than I thought.
We learned trial by fire. We learned just by, me and my wife learned pretty much living there. Yeah. We didn't live on base. We chose to live out in Japan.
Nice.
So, we lived in a real neighborhood, not on base with Americans. We were the only American, you know what I mean? We were submerged 100% in the culture.
Oh, that's awesome.
We lived about 200 yards from the train station. So we constantly jumping on the train and just, doing a day at Tokyo, doing a day here, it was so easy to go anywhere, living. I could throw a baseball hard enough from our tatami room and hit the train station.
Wow.
So, so it was really easy for us to explore Japan, so.
You know what? I think that's the way to do it too, because if you're on the military base, you're not really all it is like a little United States in another country.
Yeah, we called it mini America, and we found that the people who lived on base had really good intentions of exploring Japan, but after you live there for about 6 months, you just don't leave the base.
Yeah.
We had so many friends who just gave up and stopped leaving the base.
Yeah.
And we must have said over and over how lucky we were that we had made that decision, or the foresight that we didn't know we had to not live on base, especially sending our kids to the Japanese school, and living in the culture, and having our neighbors be Japanese, locals, and you know what I mean. It's all of our friends on base were going to the Chili's or the Taco Bell, and we were going to the little mom and pop hole in the wall ramen shops. So it was definitely the best experience I think I've ever had.
Oh, that's awesome! I know. I bet Japanese food is not the same. He told me it's not the same. So
it's
like the Japanese restaurants.
Nothing beats Japanese food in Japan. It's the greatest.
Yeah.
But if you notice that I based the train system on the moon in the book. I actually based it on the Japanese train system. So I modeled my train system off of Tokyo's train system.
And don't they have one of the best in the world? I mean,
it's the best. I mean, I can't. Oh yeah.
Yeah, if everybody could just figure out how to do transit the way that they've figured out how to do transit. I've heard it.
Yeah, bar none. Yeah.
Bar none. So when you were writing it, so that's awesome. So you had all this time. Are you I'm going to outline the entire thing and then sit down and write it? Or did you just write, did every day just get inspired on what was going to come next?
I kind of do a hybrid outline / pantsing approach. With this book, I knew, and the best way that I describe it is I knew plots A, C, E, G, but I didn't know what B, E, I didn't know. So I knew what A was going to be, and I'd outline it to a T, but I didn't know what was going to happen between that and then the next part that I'd outlined. So I would just kind of let, the magic happen in between. Whatever came out of my brain, the stream of consciousness to get me there.
Yeah.
So I would say probably, 10 points of that book were outlined, and then 10 points were, I figured it out when I got there. So.
Nice. And when I saw that it was published in 2015, I was like, I usually get my books off Goodreads when they have their what's coming out that month. Okay, I usually jump right on that. And so I'm thinking that, because sometimes I go on Amazon under bestsellers, and I'll go, what I do, I'll tell you my trick, is I don't go to the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go down to 100 and work my way backwards up there because I figured either A, they've been on that long, or B, they're coming on.
Right.
So I like catching them then. And I think your book has been on that bestseller list since then.
Yeah, it just, I don't mean to jinx it, but it's been out now for 18 months, and the sales just haven't dropped off.
Yeah, I think that because when I saw that, I was just shocked because the books recently that I've read have all come out this month, and then I looked, and when I was done reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, this book's been out. That means it's been on that bestseller list. Like, no wonder. I mean, it totally deserves to be, but that's just a testament to how good this book is that it's still making bestseller lists on Amazon. So,
I've been very pleased. It's not selling. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we're selling it in droves, but I think what's happening is that it's steady and it hasn't dropped off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the little engine that could.
Right. Right.
So.
Did you ever think about doing a sequel to it?
No. I will never say never, but it is not anywhere on my radar.
No.
Because I feel like I would just mess up the ending if I tried to write more. I think it ends. It ends with leaving the reader to think forward a little bit on their own, and I don't. Not everything has to be spelled out for everyone.
And I hesitate to say this because I don't want people to read this, but the last sentence is the best last sentence I've read in a book in a very long time. You got me, because when I got to I was like, but I'm not done. But everybody out there, do not read that last sentence. You got to read the whole book. But that is the best last sentence that I have read in a book in a very long time.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. I have a regular full-time job. And one of my bosses read the book, and he came into work that day. He had finished it the day before, and he came into work that day, the first day after finishing it, and he wouldn't talk to me. He was so mad. He was so angry. And I would start to talk to him, and he'd be like, "Don't talk to me." He'd say how mad he was, and he's like, "The ending, it evoked such an emotional response in him." That he didn't talk to me.
I can kind of see that, except for I was on the other end. I was kind of like, oh, like I was kind of like, but I can see how some people, if they were invested in it ending in a certain way, I can see that they would be like, wait a second, that is not, you can't just do that. You can't do that.
He thought he was missing a page. He's like, is there a page missing? He's like, because it didn't end the way it was. I wanted it to.
I tell you what, I did do that a couple of times, and the last quarter, because, like I said, I'm reading so fast that at one point I was like, wait, how did he get there? Okay, I gotta go back. Yeah. Because I'm not saying reading fast is always a good thing, because sometimes you're like, you miss a sentence, and you're like, wait, how did he get where he is? I forgot how he got there. No, I mean, it's an incredible book, and, did you design the cover?
No, I found an artist in Japan.
It's kind of glossy. I'm trying to get it that it doesn't.
Here, actually, you know what? So I'll tell you a really quick story, then I'll show you. I found an artist in Japan who painted me the cover on. He did watercolor and oil based on canvas, and it was so big that I had to take it on a train to a Kinko's in Yokohama, Japan, and make them scan it in one of their big scanners. And they had to scan it in 2 sections, and then it was sent to the graphic designer, who then took the 2 halves and put it together.
Wow.
And as a gift, my artist, I'm in my writing office right now, gave me the actual.
Oh, look at that.
I'm sorry, I'm trying really hard to get it in the screen.
Oh no, you got it. You got it in the screen.
But that's on canvas. So here's my hand, so you can see how big it is.
That is beautiful.
As a reference, but that's the cover, and it's done on canvas.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So then my graphic designer then did the typeset. The title and my name.
Yeah, and I didn't even notice until I really looked at it, the numbers, that it's a clock.
It's the 929.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But. He did a great job. That's really cool that he did that canvas too. Yeah,
so he gave it to me, and I had to have it. I wasn't expecting him to actually give me the original print.
Oh, that's so cool.
But
Something you'll have forever, you know?
So he lived in Japan, and I sent him a free copy of the book as, you know, kind of like a thank you on top of paying him.
Right.
And he hadn't read the book, you know, until it came out, but I sent him a free copy. And he flew from Tokyo to Okinawa on vacation, and he was on the plane, and he was reading it, and he was sitting next to a stranger, and the stranger actually said, "Oh, you know, what are you reading?" He's just trying to strike up a conversation, and the guy says, "Oh, I'm reading this book, Yours Truly 2095," and the stranger says, "Oh, the cover caught my eye. That's a really, you know, really intriguing cover," and he goes, "Yeah, it's me, I did it." And the person's like, "No way." He's like, "Yes." He says, so he flipped to the first page, and it's got like everyone who worked on the book. He's like, he showed him his plane ticket, and he said, "That's me. I'm Aaron." You know, see Aaron Austin. It says cover design Aaron Austin.
Yep, cover not.
Yeah, he's like, so he showed him. He's like, "No, that's me. Look, here's my plane ticket. That's me." And you know, so he felt like a celebrity. So you know, he's like, "Guess what happened to me today on the plane?" He's like, "I got to
brag about my cover.
I got to brag about the cover I did for you."
I tell you what, if we ever, like, I won't live to be 20 to 2095, but if you know, my grandchildren do, I hope that the moon travel is how you describe it. Yeah. Because that's the most realistic that I think I've ever read, that thinks, if you want to go there, it almost seems, you know, if you want to take your mind there, it almost seems like, oh, of course it could be just that easy, you know?
Yeah.
It could be, you know, it could be just that easy. I hope they figure it out a way for it to be that easy, you know?
You know, one more thing about the cover. The one thing I did know is that so I don't know if you know this, but this is my third novel, my third published novel.
I did see that.
Okay,
yes.
So I've never wanted stock photos as covers. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many sites you can go on, and then you pay like $5 to like unlock the copyright.
Yeah.
And all three of my novels, my first novel was 2007, my second novel was 2010, and then this one came out in 2015. My whole writing career, which now spans 3 published novels, I have hired somebody to go out and physically build me a cover from scratch. And I refuse to use stock photos, anything you can get online. I'd like to think that that's one more thing that I'm trying to do to separate myself from the pack.
Absolutely.
Because it's totally cool with people using stock photos for the covers, because some stock photos are gorgeous. I mean, they're so beautiful and they work perfectly for people's books. But I just knew that that's not for me, and I would never look down or talk or think anything less of anybody who does, because that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, right. I really don't want anybody listening to this think that that's what I'm saying.
Right.
But I just knew that I really wanted something built that I had 100% control of, where I, down to each spec, I said, no, I don't want that there. I want this, you know what I mean? And I really, really like that all 3 of my front covers were designed for me, from somebody, from what's actually going on in the book.
Right.
Well,
I know as a reader, okay, first of all, when I go on those Amazon and Goodreads and all that, unfortunately, and I'm going to tell you the truth, as a reader, like, covers matter.
Yeah,
okay?
They do.
Like, you want to say it doesn't. You want to say, maybe some people are like, oh, well, I don't. Well, I don't read reviews, okay? I go on there, and I see this cover, and I'm like, yep. And you know what I mean? Like, and you don't even know why, because it's not like I'm intentionally, but as I'm scrolling through, I'm like, yes, no, yes. And it's like, it could be a perfectly great book. But unfortunately, what catches your eye, the first thing, even if you're in a bookstore, even if I'm on Amazon or Goodreads, it doesn't matter. The first thing you see is the cover. So, and I have had people that have covers that I haven't liked so much, and I always think to myself, why did you do that? Like, it's such a good book, but that's their, like you said, it's their choice, and maybe they just want to keep going, and that's what they want to do. But I did notice your cover, and I know, because when I got it, because I get at least 3 to 4 books in the mail every single day. Okay,
that's crazy.
I know. If you saw my Amazon bill, you would be like, other people shop for clothing. I invest a lot of money in Amazon. But I remember when I got this, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. Like, so just so you know, like, yes, that is what I remembered. You know, I mean, it wasn't the title, it wasn't your name, you know, because
I have a pretty forgettable name because it's
It's just because I haven't read any of your books, and like I said, I don't read reviews. So because I don't want to, I don't care. Amazon reviews to me are the stupidest things out there ever. People ask me to write reviews, and I'm like, okay, I'll write you a review, but I think the rest of I don't like reviews at all. You know, but I like giving everybody a 5-star. I don't mind doing that.
Yeah.
You know? But I just think when people are mean for no good reason, it just seems like it's like, oh, the book came late. I ordered it, and it was 3 days late. I'm giving it a 1 star.
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
So, I actually got 2 stars on my first novel. It's called Dreams or Unfinished Thoughts, and I just got a 2-star on Goodreads for it. It was either Goodreads or Amazon. I don't remember. The reason why she gave it 2 stars, the only reason why she gave it 2 stars, in fact, she even said that the writing was superb and the story was engaging. That that in the book, one of the people is in a band. She didn't like the band name, so she gave me 2 stars because she didn't like a band name.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be like giving a movie 2 stars that you loved because you didn't like the main character's first name. Do you know what I mean? Well, you know, Star Wars would have been 5 stars, but I don't like the name Leia, so I'm going to give it 2 stars. That's what she basically did. Like she lowered my rating because she didn't personally like one of the bands that's in the book. I can't
believe she actually was honest about it. Like, she could have just given it 2 stars and walked away, but she wanted you to know that. And that's another thing that
she made that very clear, and then went on to continue to say, that how well it was written. I mean, she went on to praise it, but I got 2 stars because.
And you're like, thanks for.
I don't get mad at any reviews because. The reviews aren't for the authors. Reviews are for other readers, and it's not.
That's why I don't.
It's not my place to let reviews affect me because I don't let it.
Good.
But that was one of those few times in my life.
It catches your eye, you know.
It was one of those few times in the 10 years that I've been a published author where I kind of went, well, don't really know about that, but all right, we're gonna move on, you know.
On that. Well, that was another thing though that brought that up. Like, well, first of all, I'm older than you. But I was raised on the music, the Who and all the music. Yes. So that was a really nice addition that you put into the book for me, for people like me, because, it's just another thing that makes it relatable, I think, and I
did that.
So
I could have easily come up with a whole bunch of new music and some fake band names that, nobody would even remember. But I was like, if I want people to read this and feel an emotional attachment to the future, I gotta give them some Pink Floyd and some The Who and some Queen and what I mean. I wanted the reader to feel like they weren't in the future. You weren't far in the future.
Right.
Maybe it was tomorrow. You know. So.
Right. Yeah, it's not that far, and of course, like I graduated in '82. So I'm right there in that time period that he is. And it's like, what was I listening to? That's what I was listening to. I mean, that's what people of my generation were listening to then. So it really, you hit that dead on,
So really quick story about the music. There's a part in I almost just gave away a spoiler. There's a part where he's talking about a local band called Private Lightning.
Yes.
And he's, right? So that's a real band that put out one album and broke up. I hunted down the band members. They broke up in like 83 or 84. So they've been debunked now for years and years and years. And their only album is one of my favorite albums, like in the history of music. It's got a very like the Cars type, the type deal. Well, I hunted the band members down, and I got in touch with the. They had a violinist. I got in touch with the violinist and the bass player, and like the violinist is like teaching violin now, and the bass player he's like a studio musician, and I sent them 3 copies of the book, and I said, I talk about your band in this book, and so many people don't know that band because they only had that like one album. They're considered a one-hit wonder. There was like only one hit off the album, and they kind of faded into obscurity. And I've always loved this band so much. Well, they wound up telling the rest of the band members. So I'm friends with all of the band members on Facebook now. The lead singer, like, not only am I friends with the lead singer on Facebook, but I'm in his newsfeed because he's always liking my comments. The drummer and I private message back and forth, and I said to them, I said, if you told me back when I was 10 years old, obsessing over you guys' only album, that one day, and all it took was me putting them in my novel, for them to go, oh my God, I can't believe somebody remembers this band and liked us enough that they put us in a novel, in 2015, 30 years ahead of us breaking up, when we were some like no-name band. I think that was interesting, and it was very cool for me as such a big fan all these years to like bridge that gap because of my book. Yeah. So it was really neat, and my intention of putting them in the book wasn't sneaky to like find a way to like meet these guys. Right. It was literally I was trying to just because I love them so much. Yeah. Give them a little love. In the book, Jeff asks, "Hey, are these guys popular? Because they should be." And she's like, "I've never even heard of them." And that's what happened to that band for reals. They were like really, really popular for like 2 years, and then just disappeared. And I tracked them all down online. So it was kind of a fan moment for me.
Yeah, and that's the greatest part about Facebook is because it does connect people in that kind of way, because I do get that sensation too when I meet authors like you, and then we become, I start following you on Facebook, and a lot of my other authors start liking my stuff, and I'm like their fan. I'm like, that's really crazy,
Right.
But we're all just humans. We're all just trying to do the same thing, and it's very cool because we're in a time when that would happen. Because back in the day, that wouldn't even, you might have gotten a letter or two, but that would have been it, Yeah,
I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and I couldn't even fathom in the 80s, having even the avenue to meet or talk to, Roger Daltrey or right. Roger Waters or, anybody. But the internet and social media has made the world so much smaller.
Yes.
Like, it's made it so much, they're not, rock stars now aren't, or celebrities, I should say, aren't so far removed anymore.
Right.
And they interact, whether it's Twitter. Yep. I've seen major celebrities respond to fans, responding to their tweets. Yep. And I think, wow, we live in an age. God, I remember growing up. I would give him my left arm to like shake David Gilmour's hand. Right. But I live in a world now where I like him on Facebook, and there's a possibility that if I comment on one of his posts, he might read it.
Right.
That's crazy to me.
I know. So. I know, it's crazy. That's what I love about doing this too, because YouTube opens up anybody can do this.
Yeah.
When I decided to do this a couple months ago, and it's only been a couple of months, I just made the decision. I didn't have to go hire and go get a job. I didn't have to go ask somebody permission.
Right.
It's crazy. And then I get to talk to people who write books, and I love talking to people who write books. That's like my favorite thing ever. So
I know. When do you ever get to interact with the creator of the art that you like?
When did I?
No, we don't. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we live in a time now when we get to interact with the creator of the art, whether it's music, movies, books, paintings, and we couldn't do that 20 years ago.
I met a woman last night she wrote a book, and I found out while I'm talking to her like this, that she was a script consultant on Melrose Place when I was watching it. And I was like, oh my God, that was my life. How would,
Right.
And she got to decide stuff that I got to watch every Monday night. And it's like, yes, it closes the gap. You're like, it's just another person. It's just a person that, did that. And it's awesome. Yes. And I never stop getting thrilled every time somebody like you agrees to talk to me, because then that means I get to read your book and talk about your book. And I really want your book to be out there. I'm serious, because I love this book. It's one of the best books I've read in a while. And I love when I meet people like you, that it's like this hidden treasure kind of. Yeah. It's there, it's in Amazon, it's there, it's for people to find, and I'm like, I want to get this out there. I want to put this on my Facebook and put this on my YouTube and get people to like it, because it is so good. So I want to thank you so much for talking to me.
Well, I want to thank you more for talking to me.
Well, are you working on another book?
Yeah, I'm working on one right now. Should be out, fingers crossed, by the end of the year. Or, yeah, I'd like it to be third quarter-esque.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually working on 2 right now simultaneously, but they won't come out. I'm working on 2 at the same time, but they're not going to come out at the same time.
Right.
We're going to probably put a 6 to 8 month gap in between the 2,
mm-hmm.
just to space them out. So more for sales purposes, and but they should be done roughly around the same time. But one will be held.
Awesome.
So.
Well, you let me know, and you can come on, and I'll read the book, and we can talk about it, and keep us all up to date on it. And I would love to talk to you again. Keep in touch,
Great.
Okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right.
You too. Bye.